Morning and good afternoon, depending where you are, from a quite snowy northern Britain. My name is Foteini Spingou, and I'm a cultural and intellectual historian of Byzantium, currently affiliated with the University of Edinburgh. I'm here to introduce a book filled with the beauty of Middle Byzantine literature, a monograph on 12th century Ekphraseis written by Professor Ilias Taxidis. But first things first, a quick note on housekeeping. Please make sure that your microphone is muted and that you post your questions in the chat box or in the Q&A box during or shortly after the presentation. Ilias Taxidis, the author of the book we are here to celebrate, is an associate professor at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. Professor Taxidis' work is impressive in respect of its quantity, breadth, and quality. I leave aside the numerous and notable articles which are also detailed on his page in academia.edu and mention only his books. His first two books appeared simultaneously in 2012. The first one is an analytical discussion of the letters of Maximus Planutis, and the second is dedicated to dreams, visions, and prophetic narratives in late Byzantine historiography. In 2017, Professor Taxidis published the first complete edition of Maximus Planutis' epigrams. This annotated edition, which is supplemented by a French translation, achieved one of the highest academic distinctions. The Academy of Athens awarded it the Lycurgian Prize. In a sense, his rich undertakings on different forms of Byzantine rhetoric prepared our author for his latest book, dedicated to one of the highest forms of curated speech, the Ekphraseis. The book showcases an assortment of 137 stunning texts on Byzantine aesthetic perception and theory. Although individual Ekphraseis have attracted scholarly attention, they have rarely been studied as a group. The book offers a fresh and comprehensive account of a range of textual treasures, thus demonstrating their remarkable diversity. The overview of the text's quantitative and qualitative features, the analysis of their style and language, the collective discussion of their major topoi and topics make this book an indispensable tool for anyone working on rhetorics within and beyond the Byzantine era. There is much to say about this wonderful book, but I would like to highlight only 2 points. The first is the author's analysis of the use of the rhetorical medium of Ekphraseis as a lens for perceiving space and as a means for creating a sense of movement through diagrammatic iconicity. And secondly, that despite the in-depth scholarly analysis, the author does never forget the primary purpose of such Ekphraseis, that is, to give pleasure by allowing emotion to parade before the eyes of the beholder. It is a great privilege, and pleasure, of course, to introduce Professor Taxidis and his book to you. Ilias, I leave it to you.
Thank you very much, Foteini, for your introduction, and special thanks to Petros for this perfect organization. I share my screen. Good morning to, it's okay, okay. Good morning to everyone. First of all, I would like to, to declare that my research work was supported by the Hellenic Foundation for Research and Innovation under the first call for Hellenic Foundation for Research and Innovation research projects to support faculty members and researchers. After 10 years of preoccupation with texts of the late Byzantine period and my familiarization with the literary features and the general spirit of the Paleologian Renaissance, my study on the Byzantine Ekphraseis of the 12th century would guarantee in the best possible way a new perspective of my research activity. Rhetorical texts of different contexts written in a particularly finest language, representative product of the literary spirit of the 12th century, gave me the opportunity to study in details for the first time, on the one hand, the Byzantine rhetoric, and on the other, the literature of the Comnenian period. The detailed study of these texts and their intensive commentary helped me to broaden my research and scientific horizons in every respect and focus on the texts, the language and the facts of one of the most interesting periods of the Byzantine era. The literary production of the 12th century constitutes one of the most important chapters in the history of the Byzantine literature. Authors from this period, influenced largely by the literary aspirations of the scholars of the previous centuries, bequeath a number of works in which is evident, apart from other characteristics, a shift to antiquity. Specific genres, for example, the romantic fiction, had been revived, while widespread was the use of the rhetoric as a way for the authors to achieve their literary objectives. A significant aspect of this new aesthetic perception is also the distinction and the wide dissemination of the progymnasmata, and especially of the ekphrases, the written works in prose or in verse, in which is tried the detailed and explicit description of various topics, of cities, works of arts, persons, buildings, animal handling, and more. The main objective of my study was to collect and examine in detail all ekphrases dated to the 12th century, either it concerns self-existent texts or embedded in larger works of rhetorical content, and not only. The results, moreover, of a first search and study of the ekphrases in Byzantine literature of the 12th century certified clearly two very clear facts. First, the high quality of the literary text, which, thanks to the experiments of the writers and the strong influence of the rhetoric, will be some of the most brilliant examples of all Byzantine literature. And second, the absolute autonomy of the ekphrases as a literary genre and its consolidation in Byzantine letters as a determinant factor of the physiognomy of numerous literary works. In the first part of my monograph, after a detailed introduction concerning the genre of progymnasmata and ekphrases in special, their evolution, their theoretical characteristics, and the pre-existent tradition, the ekphrases are classified at first based on specific criteria in order to be presented systematically and overall. Then the texts are examined on the basis of a common outline, which include information about the authors, the larger work in which they are embedded, inserted, and their possible dating, as well as by bibliographical information concerning the editing of the text and the recent studies about them. Subsequently, the structure and the content of every text, as well as their literariness, are analyzed. The main interpretative and ideological, prosopographical, or historical issues are commented, and of course are also examined the key issues of language, style, narrative techniques, and figures of speech. The second part of my work deals first with the presentation of the main characteristic of the ekphrases after a comparative study between them, mostly in terms of the purpose of their composition, the reading target audience, their probable influence on the configuration of each author's literary profile, as well as upon other texts and other writers, and of course, their further contribution to the literary production and the cultural spirit of the 12th century. Subsequently, the structural and narrative features of this text are examined in detail and overall in order to be shown in clear their common writing intentions and their eventual particularities in comparison to the other genres. Furthermore, my work is a summary and analytical exploration of the ekphrases of the 12th century from a linguistic and a rhetorical standpoint, with the ultimate aim of revealing aspects of the author's thinking and worldview through the rhetorical use of language, motifs, figures of speech, topic, and the imitation of antiquity. It studies also the writer's personal writing system and the wholly particular manner in which they use and handle language, as well as it examines. Finally, the prose rhythm of the text, the writer's rhetorical skill, as an indicator of their textual aims and intention. Thank you very much for your attention.